that method too. Yeah. That method works. First of all, good evening and Happy New Year. What I like to do is I like to call the meeting of the Emergency Services Council meeting, January 18th, 2018. Can I have a roll call?
Atherton. Belmont.
Present.
Brisbane. Burlingame. Here. Colma. Here. Daly City. East Palo Alto. Foster City. Half Moon Bay. Here. Hillsborough. Here. Menlo Park. Millbrae. Here. Pacifica. Here. Portola Valley. Here. Redwood City. Here. San Bruno. Here. San Carlos.
Present.
San Mateo. South San Francisco. Woodside. County of San Mateo.
David Canepa. Madam Chair, that gives us a quorum, correct?
It's correct. We have a form.
Great. That moves us on to item 2, the approval of minutes from September 21st, 2017. Can I get a motion?
Motion. Second.
All those in favor? Aye. Moves us on to item 3, operational area report. Attachment A, Lieutenant Craig Denton. Mr. Denton, Lieutenant Denton.
Good evening, everyone. Before we get started, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Craig Denton. I'm a lieutenant with the San Mateo County Sheriff's Office, and I'm the new director of the Office of Emergency Services. I've been up there for a few months. I've worked a variety of assignments throughout the Sheriff's Office during my career. I've worked for the Sheriff's Office for 18 years. Prior to that, I worked for the San Mateo Police Department and the Half Moon Bay Police Department. I look forward to working with each of you, and anytime you need anything, please give me a call. Hopefully I can answer your questions. Excuse me? I have some. So in front of you, you should have attachment A, which is the operational area support. And as you can see from quarter 1 to quarter 2, in the many different areas that we have listed here, the numbers are essentially the same. I don't want to use the word ordinary, but they are essentially the same as the first quarter in matching up. The only spike that we would have was in the SMC alerts. And Jeff Norris will be speaking right after me regarding SMC alerts, and we'll be able to speak to why there was a boost in that. And other than that, everything else looks relatively status quo. Does anybody have any questions on regarding the form before we move forward?
Questions for Lieutenant Denton? Okay.
Then I'm going to introduce Jeff.
Yes.
Just in September, I thought we talked about, and I'm very rusty, activities, and I will go back and check my notes for the next time. Should I address them to you?
Absolutely.
It was just to capture a few more things that might be going on, but they might be going on maybe more at the local level.
Sure. And I can, when I hand out cards after the meeting, you can send any questions you have directly to me.
Great.
Any proposals you have for things that you want to add for the area report out, and I can address those.
Thank you.
So if everybody's okay, I'll move forward, and I'll introduce Jeff Norris, who'll come talk about SMC Alert and some other items that are related to that.
You know, I just want to say a couple of things. First of all, let me thank you, Lieutenant. The Lieutenant and I have met on a couple occasions, and I just wanted to thank, I don't know if many of you received the email about the earthquake. And I just thought that was really proactive, and we're looking forward to sort of those updates moving forward. We had a conversation about that, but thank you for really taking the initiative and sending that email out. And it really makes, I know there are members, I know Ms. Schneider had mentioned to me on many occasions, other members, Ms. Chuang, but that sort of communication amongst the board is very helpful. So thank you for doing that. Lieutenant Norris.
Thank you for the promotion. It's just Jeff.
Just gave it to you.
So SMC alert, we did experience a spike in the second quarter in the number of incidents. Now that largely has to do with the 50-acre fire that took place in Woodside, a couple of law enforcement incidents scattered around the county that required neighborhoods to be closed off for a while, and a few more significant auto accidents that caused large stretches of significant roadways to be closed down for an extended period of time. And that's really the reasoning for the bump in calls. Otherwise, we are sitting at 153 notifications since we last met. So our numbers have remained very, very consistent. We've seen small increases, but that's very typical for the holiday season in subscribership. So along the way, since we last met, there have been a number of incidents involving mass notification systems. And those involved largely the WEA, or Wireless Emergency Alerting Strategy. That's part of the IPAWS, the Integrated Public Alert and Warning System. Now, in our county, we actually have safety measures in place so that a WEA message can't accidentally be sent. They require 2 different passwords that have to be obtained from a secure source, and there's a limited number of individuals who have the authority to send a WEA message for the county. It would typically be authorized by the sheriff or county manager before it went out, unless it was of such extreme urgency that it simply had to go right away for life safety reasons. So some of the notifications that have happened in the recent past, that type of accident, we wouldn't have that issue here. We continue to look forward to how we use our system, and we're trying to make the most progressive, most forward-moving notification system available. We actually looked at what would happen if we had a large-scale incident, let's say a large fire that was threatening the town of Pescadero or the town of La Honda, isolated areas. And we looked at it and said, no one alerting system will ever reach everyone. So we have to plan a multi-tiered approach to how we can get those notifications out. And it includes the SMC alert, our telephone notification system, fire engines and police cars with loud hailers going up and down the street, social media, and neighbors knocking on their doors. We believe that we have a pretty good plan in place for a mass notification system, and we're pretty much prepared as best we can be. We'll find out, hopefully we'll never find out by taxing the system to its limit, but we believe that we have a pretty good plan in place for being able to notify the public in a large-scale incident.
And this plan is individually shared with each of the cities so that they're aware of what?
So the different cities, through their fire or law agencies, have access to send their own notifications on the SMC alert, and they choose the message that they want to send for their particular communities. I was speaking more to the unincorporated areas or large-scale incidents that would span multiple jurisdictions.
Thank you.
Loud enough for recording? How are our signups doing? I know we were having a lovely, healthy competition. I know we've been pushing it, but we were still only at 6% the last time.
The numbers are still at 6%, but there's a mathematic reason for that. Large population, it takes a large number of signups to bump you into the 7% mark.
So we should be doing more than to try to get our people. I thought after the fall and everything happening, we'd get a lot of people signing up.
Yes, well, traditionally, December and January are the slow months for signups. It comes almost to a stop, a standstill. And then as we start to get into February, we pass President's Day, we start going into the spring and summer. That's when we usually see spikes. And that's also when we're looking at doing some more public outreach.
Thank you.
Penrose. It's all right. Your notifications, do they also go out in Spanish?
Dependent upon how we're launching them and the time that we have to launch them. So pre-planned messages, such as our notifications that we're going to be testing the coast side notification sirens, they do go English and Spanish. Because of exigency and the need to get a message out quickly, frequently our messages are only in English. This is something that we're working on. We're working with our vendor to be able to translate these messages on the fly. And hopefully, in the next revision of the software, we'll actually have the option for the user to select the language they want to receive the message in.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman? Yes. Yeah. In regards to the additional systems that you're talking about, I mean, I think the SMC alert is great, and I think it does us all a real good favor. But as you said, that we're going to need a broad range of systems to make sure that in a really major fire we have systems that are up and running. And in our local fire district, we're looking into the possibility of using sirens again. And I was wondering if that has been looked into at the county level at all.
Actually, Fire Chief Muela has that's your last chief. Sorry about that. Chief Giorso spoke to me about that a couple of weeks ago, and he was looking at similar to what we're using on the coast side, which are Federal Signal Ultra Voice sirens. They're capable of not only doing a siren, but of also doing voice messaging. And that's one of the features, because what's ended up happening is sirens have a interesting effect now. During the 1950s and 60s, everybody knew that the siren was duck and cover. It was earthquake or Conelrad notification of potential impending war. But now, sirens have become a generic notification system. In the case of coastal sirens, they're notification to move inland and uphill. You don't have to move very far in this county. You just have to get above the 50-foot mark and you're perfectly safe. But in Concord, the sirens indicate shelter in place because they're related to the refineries. So sirens need to become more sophisticated, and voice messaging needs to be accompanied with them, and perhaps and this is a topic that's going to be brought up at the Alert and Notification Conference that's coming up in March. It's going to be held in Campbell, is standardizing different tones to mean different things around the state.
Thank you.
May I? Yes. Through the chair. Thank you so much for your presentation. And my concern is this: there's a lot of one of the issues with the mudslide in Santa Barbara County was that the voluntary evacuations and the non-voluntary evacuations were all simultaneously broadcasted. And then there was also several notifications in between. And I think that there was a fatigue in terms of people receiving the notices, and to what extent do they want to take that seriously. And ultimately, I think that we want our residents to take the notification seriously. So my question to you is that, is there a consistency throughout the county and with the fire departments and the PD in terms of the protocol and in terms of the regulations as to what extent would be the county's responsibility, to what extent is the city, the local jurisdictions, and how are we supporting each other, and to be consistent about it?
Actually, a very excellent question, and that's a project that OES is trying to move towards, and that's something that we're going to actually be looking at during calendar year 18, is how we standardize messages and what criteria launches what types of messages. So, a roadway that's going to be closed and reopened in a half an hour, does that rise to the standard? Well, perhaps if it's Sharp Park Road and it's the stretch between Pacifica and Skyline, it might. Or Highway 92 between El Camino and 280, where it's a major impediment to movement in the county. But for the most part, we're still looking to the idea that these are things that will be eminently threatening to life or property, or significantly impacting the people of the county. So things like the fire on the freeway where the mobile home burned and it shut down the freeway in both directions. Though that wasn't eminently life-threatening to anyone, it was lifestyle impacting to everyone. And trying to define those standards is a little nebulous.
Thank you. So I take it that you're going to be continue to focus on it and looking into improvements on that.
Absolutely. And you're totally right about message fatigue. At a certain frequency of messages, or messages sent at bad times of day, or messages that are of a non-emergency manner, they produce the response where people unsubscribe or block the system, and we don't want that to happen. Those are the messages which ultimately threaten more lives down the road because we can't notify those people.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Great. Are there any additional questions? Seeing none. Jeff, it would be helpful, I think, I don't know what the other board members think, but it's just, when you do this report, to kind of just keep us informed on what was mentioned and the changes that are taking place, because we know what's happened in, North County, and we know what's happened in Montecito area, but this is a really important issue in how we communicate. And so if you can just keep us updated on what OES is working on, that would be extraordinarily helpful. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. That brings us to item number 2, Hazard Mitigation Maintenance Plan, Bart Spencer.
Good evening. As some of you may remember, in September of 2016, the 29 jurisdictions in San Mateo County adopted a hazard mitigation plan that was approved by FEMA. We're in now the second year of the maintenance program. And so our contractor put together a report which was submitted to FEMA, Cal OES, and to County OES, outlining all the things and the accomplishments that were done in the last year. So currently we're in the second year of the maintenance program. Things seem to be going well. We're trying to keep people on track with all of the projects they've outlined, and then allowing them to add projects if they want to, or delete projects as they no longer exist. So my report to you this evening is things are going well.
And that's your report?
That's my report.
Great. Good job, Mr. Spencer. That brings us to new business. Item 1, OES calendar exercises, plan updates. Ms. Murty.
Hello, everyone. So I noticed that there are some new people that I have not met before. So as a brief overview, there's an OES calendar that basically goes over all of the planned events, trainings, holidays, and other things. As you can see right here, it's very extensive. So I will be able, if you're interested in emailing the updated version. But basically it goes over real events, holiday, pre-planned exercises, trainings that we're planning on doing. And given last year's storm series, this year we decided to err on the side of caution and make sure that for this quarter we're not inundated with a lot of activities that may be interrupted. So since we last met, in September, we did have the Urban Shield exercise. And let me just go ahead and click on the next one. There we go. Whoop. Thank you, Steve. One more. Here we go. Nope, wrong way. There you go. Thank you. Since September, we did have the Urban Shield exercise. We also had the statewide medical health exercise in September. And upcoming, we will be having a functional exercise on the coast side in March 2018. And that's going to be, it's currently in development, and it's going to be in collaboration with the American Red Cross and other partner agencies. In April, there is going to be a CERT Simplex exercise, and that is a communications exercise that's going to be testing traditional and non-traditional radio capabilities, and it's going to be throughout the county. I've talked with Dan Bennett, and he says that obviously it's open to anyone who's willing and able to participate. That includes cities, volunteer organizations, amateur radio users. And so under non-governmental organization and private sector, et cetera, and exercises, what that really is that sometimes OES gets the opportunity to go ahead and participate with private sector and businesses, and they want participation where we may be an observer or an evaluator to give our thoughts and our input and our expertise. Obviously, it really depends on the scheduling and what is happening at that time, but we're always more than welcome to collaborate and put things on the schedule if we have availability. We have also coming up, I wanted to mention with special events, typically those get brushed over as not being real events because they come every year. However, during that time, as everyone knows, you never really know what's going to be happening. And so we always like to buffer those days and make sure that we are prepared to respond if anything should happen, whether it be putting out SMC alerts due to traffic traffic incidences or any collisions or any storms that may be happening during that time to make sure our community is safe. Also, with the upcoming, pending Mavericks right now, that's an ongoing thing that we're going to be making sure that we're prepared for. On a regular basis, we do have ICS training, and we have gone ahead and already have scheduled that through April of this year. As we approach April coming up, we will be scheduling for the later half of the year to make sure that that's an ongoing training that's available. That's also with our SMC Alert and Web EOC training. Those two trainings we did do on a monthly basis, if not twice monthly basis. And so moving forward for the later half of the year, we will gauge interest and whether or not people are interested or able to attend those trainings on a monthly basis, or if we should be spreading it out. But it should be well received, just because we had a lot of attendance for that. And that definitely goes towards people sending out better SMC alerts, so that, as you were talking about with the message fatigue, to making sure that we're not creating white noise and that people are engaging in the information and taking the notifications seriously.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Yes.
ICS stands for,
Incident Command System.
thank you.
Mr. Green.
So functional exercise, there's lots of different exercises when you go from tabletop exercises, which are discussion based, to actually functional exercises, which were actually could be moving actual resources or actually running the exercise. So there's different levels of exercises and the level of engagement and what we like to call play, where you get to role play in the actual role that you're fulfilling. So it's a tiered approach, but for this exercise that's coming up on the coast side, it's intended to be a functional exercise, meaning that you're going to be engaging in the actual actions that you would if it were real life. You're welcome.
Through the chair?
Yes.
Yes,
Mr.
ma'am.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Questions regarding the flu seasons, and there's been a lot of, in terms of the severity of the flu and the widespread of the flu. Is that part of your strategy in terms of the training, in terms of the flu epidemic? Is there a strategy for that? And is there training or planning for that?
So with the Office of Emergency Services, we do collaborate with Public Health Emergency Preparedness, and so they are the ones that take the lead in that, obviously, and we function as a support system. I previously worked with Public Health Emergency Preparedness, and I do know that during around this time, they do test those capabilities when it comes to running what they call RAN drills, which are mass vaccination drills that happen in the very beginning of the flu season. And so they actually utilize the drills to see how quickly they can make sure that people are able to be vaccinated if a pandemic flu were to affect the area. Also, there's a lot of strategies of personal preparedness that I know the mobile clinic does go around and educate communities and things like that. So there are many different ways to collaborate on that. But if you're in regards to exercises, health determines that. So I think that if possible, I'd be more than happy to reach out to them and definitely see what they're planning as far as directly talking about influenza.
And just a follow-up is that I think that this is the mediums where the elected officials representing each city will have an opportunity to come and hear about what is current. And given that the weather and the sea levels and all these other incidents that seem to suggest emergency preparedness, that is there going to be through this mechanism that you're providing us an update during the meetings, or is it going to be directly to our city manager's office or PD? I mean, to what mechanism would you be reporting and keeping us informed in terms of the situations of those incidents?
So when it comes to, in the case of when we're talking about pandemic influenza, OES and the Office of Emergency Services does look to public health as they are the lead. They do have health officer that basically will be putting together information similar to when we had the North County fires that were happening. When it came down to a health hazard, we put out that information because being that we are not public health, we can't put out information that is not verified by the health officer. And so we look to health to give us that information, and we do make sure that it's distributed. And we did do that with SMC Alert, which we felt was a really good way to make sure that people were getting that out there. But it also went via email and phone, and we made sure that people were aware of what's going on. And it's also in the news. So we feel as if it has been covered. But if it is something very similar where it is obviously a health hazard or something that's impacting the community, we will make sure that we will similarly use all platforms available to us.
Again, is there a criteria as to when you decide that is something that it will be mobilized from?
So that is a decision that is made by the health officer. So they have certain thresholds that they would have to meet in order to make that call. I can't obviously go into that just because I work with OES. But I as far as my knowledge goes, it is something that is determined by the health officer of when to disseminate information.
Great. Are there any, yes, Ms. Schneider?
I might have missed the calendar, but we had talked about whether there was funding for Silver Dragon or any of the traditional exercises. Are we having them?
So as far as I know, it is not going to be the exact same Silver Dragon as before. They are doing they're testing different capabilities this time around. And the last that I've heard is that they have moved the exercise from March to June at this time. So I feel at the next Emergency Services Council meeting, I'll be able to provide an update with that.
So I go to our CERT, we have our opening CERT class tonight, so I can report that there'll still be something, it'll just be later in the year.
Yes.
Excellent. And I think what the councilwoman from Hillsborough was saying, I would like that information sent to me directly and not just to our city manager and our emergency services person. Is that possible to just send it directly to us too?
I don't see why we wouldn't be able to do that. I mean, if we're already going ahead and sending out the reports as, Supervisor Canepa was talking about, I don't see why we couldn't include that information.
Much appreciated. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Ms. Murdy. And just a quick question.
Sure.
If any one of the board members wanted to participate in Urban Shield, or can they observe?
We definitely have observer roles. We have, obviously volunteers if you like to be to go in there and actually participate. It really would depend on what roles are available, but I don't see any harm in.
What might be, I see the lieutenant. I don't think I want to participate actually in the Urban Shield, but
We have many
I'd like to be an
volunteers that
observer.
do
But
many
what
different
might be sort of, nice to do, and for the other members, is maybe to extend invitation once these events take place, because there might be some interest to view them. So that's just something to consider. But thank you very much, Ms. Murty. That brings us on to item 3, item 2, annual preparedness survey report, Lieutenant Denton.
And I don't want to discourage you from participating. There's just some jobs you'd probably rather have than others. So the annual preparedness survey, per the Joint Powers Agreement, a preparedness survey is submitted by local jurisdictions within San Mateo County and presented annually. The purpose of the survey is not only to create an overall snapshot of preparedness within San Mateo County as an operational area, but to highlight areas of success and improvement for local jurisdictions. Subsequently, submissions dictate objectives and goals for the upcoming year that OES and Emergency Managers Association can strategically address. This year's goal, as a reminder from last year, was to expand upon the content and depth of the survey in collaboration with the Emergency Managers Association. In total, there were more than 30 questions on a variety of topics, from operational communication to federal and state compliance. Due to the time constraints of this meeting, the following presentation will be a brief overview. If there are any persons interested in specific topics or jurisdictional submissions, we encourage you to speak to your local emergency managers and/or contact our office so we may provide you with this information. So here in slide 1 is the Emergency Operations Plan status. The Emergency Operations Plan for each jurisdiction, as you can see, that there's 86% updated, and the red being developed. You have to understand that the operations plans are updated every few years. So my guess would be that 14%, this is not their year to be updated, and that they will be updating next year, because all the jurisdictions within this county are doing very well in keeping up to date on their emergency operations plan. Emergency Operations Center activation and procedures tested annually. This is obviously standing up your EOC to make sure that, and testing to make sure that everything is functional, and also to provide training and education to those in your jurisdictions that have been trained to respond to an EOC and help set it up, and then also understand their different jobs and duties within it. The continuity of operations plan. The continuity of operations plan is very extensive. San Mateo County as a whole right now is currently in the progress of developing, exercising, and testing a county-wide plan. So as you can see here, there's 22% not developed, and everybody else is kind of working on this, but we're going to try to put something together county-wide so that we make sure that we have the operations. And the goal of that is to ensure that the essential functions of each jurisdiction can continue to be performed during an emergency, or can be resumed rapidly after the disruption of normal activities. So we still need to function as a community during an emergency, and so you need to prepare for that and understand that as resources are drained to go towards whatever the emergency is, we are still functioning at a basic level. Updated approval and maintain local hazard mitigation plan and action items. As Bart had spoken to that earlier, we're doing very well in that aspect, and everybody's doing very well, so that's not a problem within the county. Training and exercise plans aligns with SEMS, NIMS, and was it? HCEP. Sorry, I'm new. It's a lot of acronyms. And again, the county's doing well. Everybody's participating. All the jurisdictions are doing great. Yes. And I happen to have them written down because, again, I'm new. So SEMS is Standardized Emergency Management System, state level. NIMS, National Incident Management System, federal level. And HCEP, Homeland Security Exercise and Evaluation Program, which is also federal. It is unbelievable the amount of acronyms in this position that we have to learn. Active CERT and volunteer organizations. The response that everybody's got their CERT teams and their training, and they're keeping up on their training and education, and running exercises to make sure that everybody understands their roles in different, whatever the exercise is, whatever the scenario is that they want to use. So these things, everybody's doing very well in this is also. Policies and procedures to manage your solicited and convergent volunteers. So as you can see from here, this is one of our goals for 2018. And what we've learned from, unfortunately, the many, the disasters and tragedies that have occurred, not only in our country, but in California, is that we need to work on volunteer management. And so that is one of our goals this year, is to really work, get that plan solidified with all the partners within our county. Because, when people self-report at an emergency and people just want to help, you got to be able to organize them, give them the duties, find out what their specialties are, if they have any specialized training, and be able to use them to the best of their ability and not place them in any danger. So that's one of our goals for this year. And then again, and associated to that is to manage donated goods and services. Again, unfortunately, we learned from mistakes from others and what we see going on around us, and that is that, there's a lot of people that want to give, and when it could be things, clothing, bedding, sleeping bags, tents, obviously these things come pouring in. And someone's got to be there to manage it. There's got to be a plan to manage it, and then also distribute it. And so again, we'll be working with our partners, and we're going to get this plan set up this year so that we're ready to go should we have something unfortunate happen within our county. The number of staff trained in Web EOC, we have put on numerous trainings. I believe we put on at least one training a month, sometimes two. to get everybody in all three, in north, south, and central regions in our county trained up on this. And as you can see from the slide, we're doing pretty good on it. I think we could get more people involved, but as it stands right now, we're doing okay and moving forward. Promotion and use of MC Alert for mass notification.
Schneider has a quick question.
Yes.
Go back a couple of slides with the volunteer coordination and the how to manage donations.
Yes.
When you say partners, that you're going to work with partners on that, does that include those of us sitting up here that we'll get to review the document, or is it something that you deal with directly with our EMS people at the city level?
Everybody, this is these type of things are there are plans that are already written out there. There are counties that have worked on this and come up with what they feel is best practices. You certainly should have input, but our partners, obviously American Red Cross, the HSA, the people that are, I vision this in terms of like where shelters are going to be set up, where we're going to be bringing the people that are in need is where, a lot of these things will be going. But absolutely, those are just a couple of the partners of many people that we will be speaking to, maybe even the private sector as well, because these are, it's the community that's coming in. So it's the community that needs to make the decision, and you certainly should be involved in that.
Well, I'm happy to hear Red Cross because I used to do logistics for them. So yeah, there's a good learning pattern on something like that, but there's so many other partners, so many people out of Santa Rosa that popped up. It seems like maybe even having a list of who the partners might be and who might be active in each of our cities could be of assistance, because frankly, you get overwhelmed with things you don't need.
Yes.
And I hate to put it that way. You never want to discourage a donation, but they get in the way. So, or you get food that you can't serve, or you get a bunch of things. So I think this is great, but just keep in mind, I'm glad to see the Red Cross, but I'm sure my CERT team would love to be able to review and help with that.
Fantastic. And of course, the promotion and use of SMC Alert for mass notification that Jeff Norris so eloquently went over earlier and went through in great detail. He's a great person to have on that. Very, very good subject matter expert. So that's what I have. If any of you, like I said, if you have specific questions regarding your specific jurisdiction and we didn't cover it in this short presentation, then either you can email me when I give you my card, or we can discuss it and somehow we can get this information to you, or you can just go to your emergency managers who all participated in the survey, and they can describe and answer anything in detail that you have regarding your own jurisdiction. So
Great. Thank you, Lieutenant. Mr. Greet.
I don't know where this comes in, but what about therapy animals for victims as well as for employees of first responders? Is that under your jurisdiction, or where does that come in?
that would be under the individual jurisdictions on what they do in terms of what they have for their wellness programs or whatever they have going on. That we support. The OES obviously supports anybody, but those type of things, if there's
They don't come under volunteer category.
that's a very good question. I mean, to be honest with you,
I've noticed that it's becoming more common. I was just curious where.
I know where you're coming with that, and I think that it is, but those are all things that we're going to investigate. If it's part of the industry standard, when we're going through this and we're looking, to people who either already have implemented this plan or in the development of this plan, then if it's an industry standard, then it's something that we will definitely look at and we definitely want to implement, because we want we want the best care for those that are in need in those circumstances.
Thank you.
Great. Ms. Morgans?
Thank you. Thank you for the support. This is great. To Ms. Degree's point, if I'm not mistaken, there are some shelters and some animal, I want to say rescues, but there are many, like 9 Lives and all that. They actually will partner with you, so you bring those on board. Also, the Salvation Army is a great partner when it comes to providing that other
Absolutely.
that leg. And then I had one question. Throughout your report, there were several times it was said, the word was update, or I think it was update. What is updated? What is included in that updated? It was used several times on communities or updating. What does that mean?
For plans or?
Yeah, for the
So-
plans.
So for
what
plans,
what's
so the
the
plans that need to be updated, they can be updated based on something that has changed within your community, your individual community. It could be something that's come down from state or federal level that we need to just, so the plan itself, the bulk of it normally never has to be changed. They make little small changes in there based on best practices that come down from above, or laws, things like that, or just those are type of things. But
So
you
we
don't have,
basically would be all playing by the same rules. It just has to do with kind of personalizing it to your community. Okay, thanks.
that's correct.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, thank you for the report. That brings us on to item 3, hazardous materials response. Mr. Thrasher?
Chair and Council, thanks for having me tonight. I see a few new faces, so I'll introduce myself. I'm Battalion Chief Kent Thrasher from the Belmont Fire Protection District, and I also work with your hazardous materials response team. I manage it. The response team takes care of all hazardous materials issues in the county, working with the county and through a contract with the county and the fire district in Belmont. I'm here tonight. I wanted to just give you a brief update on our county hazmat team, some response totals for the past calendar year, and answer any questions that you might have. I'll try to keep it brief. Our response for the year was up considerably for the first 3 quarters, as I reported last time we were here, and it completely fell off the rack for this last quarter, which is a good thing. And it's a good thing in many ways, along with all the normal activities we have. Working with OES and the county through a grant, we received a new piece of equipment, a bobtail truck, a large Isuzu pickup truck with a big box in the back and a lift gate that we got through a grant, through the hard work of our friends here at OES. And we spent a couple months outfitting that and preparing it to be used in the county as an emergency response vehicle. And in December, we were able to actually bring that up live, and it's a great vehicle. It replaced an older trailer that we had to pull behind a vehicle, as well as became the reserve for our frontline piece of equipment should it go down for any reason. So it took the place of 2 vehicles with one, and it was all grant funded, and it's a phenomenal vehicle. And I'm sure you'll see it around. It's very hard to miss. It's big and it's red. Along with that, in the month of November and December, 3 of our newest probationary firefighters went through the hazardous materials technician program. As your hazmat provider, the Belmont Fire Department, as a condition of employment, you have to become a hazardous materials responder while you're on probation. So a little pressure there. It's a 160-hour course. It's 4 weeks of hands-on training, including a solid week of nothing but chemistry. They have to pass that in order to keep their job, so the pressure was on. All 3 of the folks that we sent this time finished in December, and were very successful, and they're on the streets taking care of hazardous materials issues in the county as we speak. Lastly, I wanted to let some of you know that may not be aware that the Belmont Fire Department, the San Mateo Fire Department, and the Foster City Fire Department have been working under a shared services agreement for the last several years. And we've been doing that with the intention of becoming a JPA and forming a consolidated fire department. That JPA was officially adopted by all 3 of our city councils in November. So the legal entity was formed, the negotiations are now happening, contracts are being set, and we hope to go live with the San Mateo Consolidated Fire Department on July 1 of this year. It's a huge endeavor. It's been it's a little, I don't know, a little cocky for us to think we're going to get it done by July 1, but I think we can do it. So we're working hard at it. If not July 1, it'll be shortly thereafter. I bring that up because as your response team for hazmat in the county, that enlarges the pool for us. So we go from just the members in our small 2-station fire department to the members in our new 150-member fire department. So we'll have several more folks to choose from. It'll increase, give us much more flexibility in our response models, increase our in-house training capabilities, give us the ability to participate in regional training events and regional activities, which we've been very limited with in the last several years just because of the size of our team. And it'll also give us a huge boost in succession planning. We don't run that many calls. You know, we run lots of fires, lots of medicals. We run 20 to 30 hazmat calls a year. So that experience is critical, and they're very critical calls. So building on that succession planning with more and more folks is an added bonus to us. And with that, I'll wrap up. I'll keep it brief, but I'd be glad to answer any questions anybody has about your hazmat team or anything fire related for that matter.
Are there any questions? Thank you for your report. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Have a good evening. That brings us on to the 4 response to incidents. Brian Mulver. Mr. Mulver.
Good evening, Chair and council members. The response to incidents. Oh, I'll click. Thank you. The presentation is on the response from the entire operational area, which includes all the political subdivisions within the county, to the North Bay fires. For county and upper area fire and EMS, 90 firefighters, 17 engine, and their overhead and personnel spent time in the areas in the North County fires, or the North Bay fires. And also 9 ambulances and rotating crews spent 2 weeks up there providing EMS during the disaster. For emergency management response, and my colleagues, there were public information officers, communication unit leaders, emergency managers, like myself and Ken Anderson, who's in the audience tonight. Central County Fire Department overhead spent 6 days up there in 2 different locations. I spent 20 days up there myself in Sonoma County alone. And then 4 environmental health technicians spent 14 days to over a month up there on the recovery from the hazard areas. And onward, that wasn't all. The EOC at Sonoma County couldn't fit everyone in it at all, so the National Guard and Air National Guard made places for us to have meetings and project work, and they even put some bathrooms out for us. Our web host was faster than the one inside the EOC, too. We were very close to it. The number one thing that we suffered from in Sonoma County was the tens of thousands of shipments that we received. We didn't know, in many cases, who ordered it, where it was supposed to go, where it went after it was used in one location. And so looking at the logistics of the entire mess took alone 4 weeks to figure out and search for equipment, especially rented equipment. It was an emergency, and they ordered, I think they ordered an ample amount of goods, because when they ordered these supplies and equipment, the disaster was still ongoing. They didn't know when it was going to stop. And we sent a lot of this back to FEMA and Cal OES in weeks after, in November. And there's nothing wrong with ordering that much material with the disaster that they had. At the time, was the largest fire in the state. And onward, the lessons learned was a lot of volunteers and a lot of emergency managers from other counties from all over California knew what the situation was, and they stayed safe. They were all helpful. There was not anyone who was unhelpful. If they were, maybe they were suffering from stress, but I didn't see it myself. We acted decisively on decisions that needed to be made, and we did it as a team in many cases. The main lesson of all was to follow your pre-established policies that you have right now. Right now. You can't create a policy after the disaster happens. So an attorney and a policy manual would be very helpful during an incident. And for people to request assistance before you think it's needed, and that goes for us in our county. We're really going to size up the disaster and determine a length and the amount of resources that we need. A lot of those decisions are going to affect you too, and we'll be thinking of you and with your group of emergency managers. So it takes a lot of time to mobilize thousands of people to come to your city to help you out, and our county to help us out. So with that, the basic training in incident command system is the saving grace with helpful people with good attitudes that can communicate well and be counted on to get the job done. The basic training in the standardized emergency management system was key for the success of the recovery mission. Key. And I would just like to thank Jacob Reed and Ken Anderson for their input in this presentation. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for the presentation. It's wonderful. Ms. Schneider.
And thank you to everyone and every officer that went. Very grateful for that. Couple of questions. You said that supplies were delivered, many weren't used, and they were sent back. My experience and my training was during Katrina, there were warehouses full of bottled water, as one example, and there was no way to return that bottled water back. So it was actually thrown out of a second floor warehouse and wasted. So, and I work in recycling, so it's very hard for me to see things like that happen. It's one of the things that I'd like to make sure that as we go forward, when we've got, I don't know what you would call these, perishable goods, I guess, that we have a plan, because that water could very easily have gone to other shelters and
I
had
assure
been
you,
used.
we wasted no precious resources.
I'm great. I'm very, very glad to hear that.
We had a lot of day workers that were able to use the personal protective equipment that were issued to all of the residents and all the disaster survivors. The water also went to the day worker areas, so that could be used for the workers at the sites.
Good. Hopefully that's a good lesson that we learned from 2005. The other, professionally, I work in solid waste, and after every disaster, fires less so because there's less waste. It's all up in the air. There are contingency plans that every city can have that can handle the demolition materials. When they don't have those pre-existing plans, then you get what my field will call fly-by-night entities coming in. So for example, Northridge earthquake, there were a bunch of concrete people that came in from outside of the state. They took government money to clean up concrete, and then they left. And they left mounds of concrete. Concrete becomes a haven for vectors. So rats, mosquitoes, et cetera, things like that. So in my field, we've tried to push cities to having contingency plans for cleanup. And it sounds silly, and sometimes I'm told, oh, we have that, but my gut is telling me we don't have that. And, an earthquake has got a different waste stream than a fire has, than a hurricane has, than a flood has. So I would hope that as we work forward from all the disasters of the last year, that we have different plans. The biggest problem with a wet incident is how quickly the smells and the rot sets in. So it has a different set of cleanup than you might have if it's just an earthquake with no rain. So hopefully we'll be seeing plans like that we can bring back to our communities. And it really means that you've got a contract with FEMA for cleanup, or you've got a contract with company XYZ, and you've got a set price. Otherwise, they come back to the cities and they price gouge you. So just something to think about in terms of cleaning up post-disaster, after the first responders have gone home.
Any additional questions?
I have a question.
Yes.
Through the chair. I just have a quick question. How do you determine the range or how far you'll go to support an emergency? What is that determining factor? How do you decide where you're going to go? So in an emergency, how do you decide if you're going to Napa or LA? How is that decided for emergencies?
Okay, the requesting county decides for you. They are looking at their needs to fill gaps while their county affects a continuity of operation of business, so they can get business going. They bring people to backfill what they could do in their field while they recover their own systems for doing daily business. People from all over California and the United States can handle doing the emergency work.
Okay, thank you.
Any additional questions? Thank you for the presentation again. That brings us to the American Red Cross update report. Is Go Fanai here? Okay, thank you. Please state your first and last name. Thank you.
I'm Luann Williams, the Home Fire Coordinator and External Relations Coordinator for San Mateo County. So I just wanted to share some of our great work that we've been doing. So the Red Cross has responded to 20 disaster incidents in fiscal year 2018, which covers from July 1st of last year to June 30th of this year. We have provided safe shelter, hot meals, emotional support, financial assistance, and other disaster assistance to 91 clients, 65 adults, and 26 children. The disaster responses by city are as follows. Daly City were 3, East Palo Alto 1, Foster City 1, Millbrae 3, Pacifica 4, Pescadero 1, Redwood City 3, San Mateo 2, and South San Francisco 2. In terms of disaster preparedness, we have provided free smoke alarm installations and home fire preparedness information to 932 people, installing 1,066 smoke alarms in the following cities: Pescadero, Half Moon Bay, Moss Beach, San Mateo, Foster City, Belmont, and East Palo Alto. And I have to admit that it was done in a very short period of time. That was done between July 15th and October 28th. And if it hadn't have been for all our volunteers and our community partners, we wouldn't have been so successful. And on April 28th, we are partnering with San Bruno Fire, and we will be having another one of these home fire events. Any questions?
Are there any questions? You know, I have a question. So you're going to roll it out to San Bruno, and then are you going to go north, or how do you decide what cities to, to do this in? Additional cities. Help me understand your methodology.
Well, it's all on who we can partner with, is what it is. We decided that we would go to San Bruno and offer it, and they accepted. And that's exactly what we did with Belmont and San Mateo and Foster City. And, I guess it just depends, I guess, was what it is. We approach the fire departments and ask them to identify the areas that have the most fires, and we go from there.
Okay, thank you. Are there any additional questions?
No.
Keep up the great work. Thanks.
Thank you.
That brings us to public comment. We're limited to 3 minutes for each presenter. Do we have, besides Mark Adiego for public comment, do we have anyone else? I know. No. Yes. Okay, great. Why don't you come on up?
Good evening, Mr. President, members of council. My name is Jeff Kernan. I'm the Assistant Sheriff with San Mateo County, and I was approached by a few council members this evening and in the recent past, and I was asked if I could provide an update, one of Janet's words, on OES, and in regards with some concerns with the transition that continues to occur in OES. And by nature of assignment and by nature of our staffing, some of that is out of our control. I did meet with Captain Zamora and Lieutenant Denton and Under Sheriff Sanchez today. We went over our strategic plan for year 2018. After that, I personally met with Sheriff Carlos Bolanos, and I also met with the president of our Fire Chiefs Association, Stan Maupin, and Chief Ron Myers from North County Fire, to get some direction from them and see what they would like from OES. So I'd just like to report to you that the sheriff has appointed me to the transition plan for the next few months to help Craig with his new leadership role as the OES director, and to work with Captain Alma Zamora so I could help them with some of the learning curves. As you know, some of them are very steep. And it's not just the acronyms. There's a lot of relationship building and historical information. So I am pleased to have this role. As you know from some of you that I was a past director of OES and I was a past Homeland Security captain here. So I do have a little info that I think would be worthy of sharing. And in regards to some of the questions, I took some notes this evening, and I can speak quickly on those. The first thing that my priority is to have an improved communication plan, both internally and externally, and that's something we spoke of today. And that goes back to the simple email that was sent out after the earthquake to keep you informed as our governing body, and so you can keep your constituents informed, but also to keep all of our partners and colleagues informed throughout the several disciplines that we work with, specifically fire, EMS, public health, and law. So that's one thing that we will be implementing immediately. In regards to the Urban Shield, I would recommend you can go as a VIP. We do have VIP buses, and they'll take you to all the fun scenarios, and it'll be at a better time, and you'll probably get a free meal out of it, and we can help you with setting that up with the Alameda County Sheriff Greg Ahern. We've done that in the past, and I would encourage to be a VIP and not be a role player, because you'll be stuck on a scenario site for at least 12 hours in the cold. The sirens were mentioned this evening. In years past, we did have a recommendation for sirens to put not just on the coast side, but also on the bay side. Two challenges we had. One was we would need political will from the city jurisdictions, and also we would need a lot of money because they're very expensive. However, I'm not sure if you've been appraised of our grant process, but we do have two grant funds, SHISHCAP, which is a state Homeland Security grant program. That's our state grant money, and we have UASI, which is the Urban Area Security Initiative, and that's our federal grant dollars that we receive on an annual basis based off of our population and the level of threat we have to the San Mateo County community. We do share that with the city and county of San Francisco. They get the lion's share, but we do get enough. And the fire chiefs, police chiefs, the county sheriff, and the public health director convene, and they decide and they prioritize how that money is spent so that it's equally dispersed for the needs of our operational area of San Mateo County. So the sirens could be another proposal if you so wish. We could add that to our list and share with you the proposals that we do receive, just so you know, as a community, what we're spending our grant monies on. Because there's some really good stuff that we're spending it on. It's not just equipment. A lot of it goes to training as well. I would recommend that we continue with countywide training with our city EOCs and the city EOC staff. That's always been a gap and a challenge, both at the county level and at the city and town level. As you know, if in the event of an emergency, whether it's catastrophic, man-made, or natural, we would be required to activate an EOC at a level 1, 2, or 3 status. And the first 12-hour operational period, we would expend most of our staff. John from Portola Valley can attest to that he doesn't have enough staff to run all of his sections, and he would need help. So I think running a countywide exercise at a tabletop level, nothing too stressful, so we can learn how to work together and support each other in a shared resource model like we did in years past. I think that would be helpful for all of us. And it would also help the county OES EOC with the span of control. So instead of supporting 20 EOCs, or 20 city and town EOCs, we have over 25 special districts as well. We could have a better span of control if we're collectively have zone-type EOCs. So that's something we should consider moving forward for some of our training plan. We did write and vet a terrorism response plan. In the event there's a terrorism attack in the United States, what do we do? Like the Boston Marathon, for example, I received a lot of phone calls from judges. Are we closing our courts? I said, no, it's not. It doesn't affect us in California. But what do we do, though? What happens if it was in the state of California, in the region, or in the county? And how do we respond? Fire departments know how to respond. Police will respond. EMS and public health will also respond. But what do we do as a policy group, as elected officials, as leaders in the community? What's your role in the event that we had a terrorism attack? So that would be part of our terrorism protocol plan, is to work on that communication, collaboration, so that we all know who's doing what and what direction we give to the community and whatnot. So I think that that's another thing we can work on together this year. We're also bringing back to life our vulnerable population plan. Stephanie, to my right, is going to lead in that effort. And as you know or don't know, that's a combined effort with health, our nonprofit organizations, HSA, and NOES, because there's a vulnerable population. It's not just young people and elderly folks and physically disabled, mentally disabled, and people on medication or at hospice care. We need to identify who they are, where they are, and how to find them, and how to evacuate them, how to transport them, and then what needs they have when we shelter them, who their caretakers are, who their health care providers are, who their social workers are. And that kind of dovetails into the question that was asked about the, I don't want to say pets, the therapy animals. We had that challenge when we had the evacuation of the Redwood City apartments on Woodside Road. Everyone had a therapy animal. And how do we deal with that? And the Red Cross was able to help us because we find the shelter, Red Cross manages the shelter. What do we do with these therapy animals, and how do we know if it's a legitimate therapy animal or if it's somebody's cat that's giving them comfort? So those are the things that can be built into the vulnerable population plan as well. And I do believe that the Red Cross is the partner for shelters. The EOP was mentioned, the Emergency Operations Plan. A few years ago, I hired a company, Tetra Tech. It took them 2 years to write our plan. It's a very robust plan. I shared that plan in hard copy, and I think it may be an electronic version to each city. I would recommend, if you do not have an EOP, 80% of that is copy and paste. It's that we live in the same county. We have the same vulnerabilities. The only difference is if you're in South City, you have Genentech. If you're in Menlo Park, you have Facebook. So you're going to have a different landscape, a different type of threat. So you'd have to include what's specific to your jurisdiction. But most of it is already done, and I would rely on your emergency managers to help you with that if they haven't already. The COOP plan, the Continuity of Operations Plan, that's another beast of a plan. It took me a good part of a year to write that. The county government collectively, each department within the county wrote their own COOP plan. Collectively, all plans combined becomes a continuity of government plan. And like Craig said, that's for our essential functions. If you don't have a COOP plan, we can share with you ours so you have an idea of what it looks like. And my scenario to the sheriff and the judges in this building was, if Godzilla stepped on this building, could we operate tomorrow? Where do we do our arraignments? Where do we house our inmates? Where do we do patrol? Those are the questions. Where's our server backups and our technology systems? Those are the questions that you have to ask. It's all in the plan. And then if we have like the flu, we're having a problem with the flu right now. I think Marie asked earlier. If we have 50% staffing, what do we manage? Who does what if we're at 25% staffing? All that's in the COOP plan. So I would encourage you, if you don't have one, reach out to us and we'll send you ours. And a lot of it is confidential information, obviously, because it's not to be shared with the public, because it would give up what we're doing for mission essential critical positions. The donations management was discussed. The donations management plan, we wrote one in draft form. It was vetted. I ran into a couple of obstacles with that, just to share with you. There's two types of donations. There's money, financial, and then there's in-kind, which could be cots and toilet paper and whatnot, right? So the money part, if there was a catastrophic event and it was on CNN, people start sending us stuff, we would have to put that out on social media or on the news, open up an account, a disaster account. Initially, we had an agreement with the Silicon Valley Community Foundation to manage that. The Controller's Office and the Treasurer's Office for the county told me we cannot do that anymore because we'd be given preferential treatment to one vendor, and another vendor could grieve that. So we have to keep it within the county coffers, to say. So when I met with the Treasurer and the Controller's Office, we would accept the money into a disaster account. However, then it becomes public money and it follows the county purchasing process rules of expenditures, and we may not be able to release that money quickly to the people in need. So that was one of the obstacles that we were working through with the controller's office. So just something to think about when you're looking at your donations management plans. And I would also refer you to the Salvation Army. They are the experts on in-kind donations. They know how to warehouse, account for, and distribute in-kind donations. They are the best in the business. And I think, Ann Schneider, you mentioned you got, like, your CERT team wants to take a look at that. You probably have the most active CERT team since Marge Colapietro was with us, and we would love for that help in that second set of fresh eyes.
Lieutenant, just a quick minute. Ms. Hurt.
So you're mentioning all these plans. Is there an online collection of all these plans so that we independently, as jurisdictions, can view and see what we can add or take away?
We have the plans housed in OES across the street in Building 555. Some of them are online, some of them are not, because some of them are not for public disclosure, because it would make us vulnerable to malicious efforts against us. However, if you're interested, you're welcome to come over to OES, and we'll share with you everything we have. It's right there in the bookshelf. And then also Steve Mahali has them on the server as well. And some of them are vetted and adopted through the Board of Supervisors, and others are not. They're in draft form that still need to be revised because they may be 5 or 10 years old.
Can you provide a list of the name of all those plans? Because throughout your
Absolutely. And
yeah.
Steve has that list of our local plans and our regional plans, and it's already prepared. So we could share that with you as well.
Are there any more questions for the Assistant Sheriff? Yes, Ms. Borgens.
Thank you. So on our most vulnerable population that you talked about, does that also include our visually impaired and hearing impaired?
It has to. It has
Okay,
to
good,
include
good.
everyone. And that's why we have to work with public health and behavioral health for our mental health community.
Yeah, and I noticed that through in Redwood City in particular, we're working very close with our neighborhoods. We've kind of divided up and gotten new neighborhood associations. And that's one of the things that we're asking them to do too, is to go out and actually research your neighborhood and find out who those people are. And that would be another source of information for you to get, because then, you know, you're not going to walk the street to find out where they are. So getting them from the communities themselves, that'll be something we'll have to help you with.
Thank you.
Great. Are there any final questions? Ms. DeGree.
How is it covered for nuclear attack?
We have sirens on the coast.
I think we need more than that.
That would go to sheltering in place for the radiation. And I don't have that plan to refer to, but hopefully.
So I think we ought to say something about getting ready for all this kind of stuff.
Steve, do we have a radiological? No, we do not. We do not.
Okay. Yes, Ms. Schneider.
I think you and I worked on this when we first had the election change about a year ago, and came up with, there was a brochure. It was a little old, but at least it said go to a place that has as much concrete as possible. Didn't we do something about a year ago? Very simple.
So we did it last year when there was an incident that obviously brought up this topic, and we did actually include it in the presentation. It had to do a lot with sheltering in place, emergency notifications. I believe it also included some public health information that they had as far as how to be prepared, as far as not only radiation, but just personal preparedness and making sure that not only your home, but your car, making sure that you're having conversations with your family, you have a communications plan, and that was distributed. We can redistribute that out if you guys would like that. And that way you have it an updated version if there's anything that has changed.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Murdy. Thank you for the presentation. Thank you for sort of just outlining what the focus is, Assistant Sheriff. Really appreciate it, and I'm glad you're going to be with us, I think, for the next, you said next several months?
Until March 30th.
Until March 30th. Okay. And yes. Yes.
I want to thank Deputy Sheriff Kern's comments, because I think that it brings back to this body that many of the new members representing their cities. The idea is that there's a lot of, we're encounter in our cities too, the new staffs. And so trying to get them up to speed in terms of the protocols and the emergency preparedness, it is critical. The training is ongoing and it needs to be consistently delivered. I appreciate the fact that there are best practices out there, but when we have a new director here, and then the time it takes to implement those practices and to bring everybody up to speed does take time. And so the continuity is important and the consistency is important. And so it encompasses this leadership in this body to help carry that through.
I think the message is heard loud and clear. You've been on this body for how long now? How many years?
6 years.
You've been here 6 years. I think, who's the longest tenured member? Sue, how many years have you been here? 15 or 16. But I think, I feel real confident. I think, I've had the opportunity to meet with, Lieutenant Greg Denton. I think one of the things, again, I go back to it, it's all about activity and being proactive. And I was really concerned sort of about, the communication. I just thought, again, we all got the email. You sent it out to the whole board of directors on the earthquake. And I just feel, extremely confident. I think the plan they have in place with Jeff here, I think we're moving in a positive direction. And I think a lot of good things will come. But thank you for your comments. Okay, Assistant Sheriff, thank you. Moving on, that moves us on to announcements. Are there any announcements? Yes.
One housekeeping question.
Yes.
Have all the cities been trained, all the city staff been trained, CERT trained?
Okay, so the question is, and I'm going to ask, is Jeff still here? Oh, no. I'm going to ask Mr. Kernan to come up here. The question is all city staff CERT trained? Is that what you had asked?
Yes. Staff in every city, has the staff in every city been CERT trained or offered CERT training?
No.
I think that might be something we want to talk to our cities about.
A lot of the fire departments lead in the CERT effort. The sheriff's office does the coast side because it's a little different on the coast, but more or less the fire departments, right, Ken? You guys are running that, so. Would you like us to conduct a survey for you?
I think it's important for the cities to know. I know our staff has been offered CERT training. I'm not sure if they've completed it, but I know they've been offered it.
Okay.
I think that's a great idea, Ms. Penrose. Maybe what you can do, and staff can get back to us on what that number looks like. And then I guess we'll go from there in terms of next steps and action. Does that sound good, Ms. Penrose? Yes. Okay. Can I have a motion to adjourn? All those in favor? I want to tell you our next meeting, the admin committee meeting meets on April 12th, 2018. The ESC meeting is Thursday, April 19th, 2018. Have a good evening and thank you.